So she did that as kind of a puny example, but I wouldn't have had the idea. But then all the things were inventoried. That wasn't work for me or Jeffrey. It was just regularly done.
Answer the question.
Okay.
A discrete question on a different topic. We know that at one point you owned a property in Palm Beach. It was a large oceanfront estate. We understand that you sold that estate to a guy named Abe Gossman.
Travel with you or board your yacht at any point?
Not that I recall.
Did Miss Maxwell ever travel with you on that boat at any point?
Absolutely not.
Were there any other boat trips that you and Mr. Epstein would have taken together at any point?
None. I don't think I ever went anywhere on that boat without my wife and family.
Understood. Do you use any aliases or nicknames when you communicate with people you're associated with?
No, less. Sometimes LHW, that's it.
Are you aware of Mr. Epstein having any aliases or nicknames that he would commonly use?
No,
Are you aware of Miss Maxwell having any aliases or nicknames that she would commonly use?
no.
When speaking about your boat, you seemed to be very certain that Miss Maxwell had never taken any type of boat trip with you. Is there a reason why you were more sure about her not attending any boat trips with you?
Because it couldn't be, I'm not sure that, I know that Jeffrey didn't take any boat trips with me. That's for sure. And so I might not have perfect recall, but I'm positive he never took any boat trips. So I'm positive that she never took any boat trips because I only saw her a couple of times in my life.
Understood. Are you aware of, let me back up first. Mr. Epstein did a lot of foreign travel. Would you say that's an accurate statement?
That's kind of I want to answer because I don't want you to be tricking me. I thought he traveled a lot. When I thought he traveled a lot, once I knew he was a fraud, I don't believe he traveled at all. I mean, he'd tell me he was in Switzerland, he'd tell me he was anywhere in the world, and I believed him. That son of a bitch could have been in bed. I didn't know where he was calling from.
To the best of your knowledge, he would inform you that he was traveling all over the world.
Oh yeah, I'm in Saudi Arabia working for the king. I'm in Switzerland talking to banks, and I'm really busy and I'm tired, and he'd hang up. So he would reach out to me erratically, and sometimes frequently. But I never believed that he said. I didn't just. If my wife told me she was in Chicago, I would believe it. If my lawyer said he was in Columbus, I would believe it. If I call Matt up, I don't ask my lawyer from Columbus. I say, are you in Columbus, or are you, in bed, or wherever the hell you are? And I think that was part of Jeffrey's con, and it just grinds the hell out of me that he was so busy. But I don't believe any of it now. I think it was complete bullshit, and it was part of the con.
Understood. Is it fair to say that Mr. Epstein would flout that he had foreign contacts, whether it be foreign dignitaries or contacts in foreign governments, something to that effect?
Do you mean flaunt?
Flaunt, yes. Sorry, long day.
It's been a long day.
Yes.
Do you have any knowledge of Mr. Epstein holding citizenships in any other countries other than the United States of America?
No.
Have you ever seen Mr. Epstein possess any other foreign country's passport?
No. Or any passport, including an American one.
If Mr. Epstein was talking about connections he had with foreign nations or entities, is there anyone he would most commonly refer to when speaking to you?
He, over the period of time, mentioned a lot of them, and some he would repeat at some periodicity, some he would mention once, but it's kind of a muddle of, but it was a pretty regular flow,
Was there anyone he mentioned more often than others?
more often. Maybe several times he'd mention the Queen of England.
The Queen of England?
Yeah, the one that died.
Did you ever get the impression that Mr. Epstein was trying to get close with people of power, influence, wealth to better shield himself from any type of scrutiny?
No, it seemed to me that that was the milieu that he operated in. And so it made sense to me, in terms of advice he was giving me, that he was dealing with the most sophisticated people, and they were his clients.
And so, based off that response, would it be fair to say that you would believe that could be part of his con, was touting all of these connections he had all around the world?
As I look back at it today, I'm positive it was his con. I mean, as positive as I could know. I mean, the founders of Google, the President of the United States, the King of Saudi Arabia, go on and on. It was almost, every month I'm off to do this with that, or I'm going here and there. And he was in a trust position, and foolishly, I never questioned. He was just, that it wasn't just, they was bullshitting me, or these weren't really his clients.
And is it your testimony today that if Jeffrey Epstein was enriched by his connection to you, that all of that enrichment was gained through theft, deceit, and or without your knowledge?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Do I know where Jeffrey got his money? I know he stole money from us. I believed he had substantial income from these make-believe clients that afforded him the lifestyle that he had. That made sense to me.
And you got engaged in 1992. Do I have that correct?
September 8th, 1992.
And you were married then in the following year, 1993.
1, 2, 3. That's how I remember that one.
And at any point after your engagement and your ultimate marriage, did you ever engage in any extramarital affair or sexual contact with anyone other than your wife?
No one. Boy, I'm really happy you asked that question. What's that connected to? Oh.
Is it, Mr. Wexner, is it your testimony here today that Mr. Epstein's wealth came from not only yourself, but also this extensive network of clients that also were wealthier, otherwise influential individuals?
No question. Absolutely.
And, you know, sitting here today, with the benefit of hindsight being 2020, how do you think that the United States Congress could prevent the crimes and, in your words, cons and deceits that Mr. Epstein and by extension Ms. Maxwell committed on victims around the world and specifically in the United States?
Well, I would hope that this interview or whatever it is today would help you to understand that he was a crook and a con man. And in hindsight, you know, looking back, he would make Bernie Madoff look like a Boy Scout. So complete, so diabolical. I mean, just incredible, sinister. If I were giving the government advice, I'd tell the IRS to look into Jeffrey. He couldn't have made all that money and spent all that money and had the lifestyle he did and be the crook that he was and pay taxes. So if he would do the things that he did to those women and do the things that he did to me, then anything is possible, I believe. And so if Al Capone went to jail for being a crook and tax evasion, it would be so obvious to me today that now that I know Jeffrey's a crook and the things he did and the people he was associated with, there was a lot of money and he got it from a lot of people. I can't believe that he had time to really work because he was playing so goddamn much and I never knew it. If my attorney or your attorney, I don't even know if I would assume you're an attorney, but if you had one, and every time you talked to him and he said, I'm in the office working on your stuff, I don't think you'd run over there to see whether he was working on your stuff or believe that he wasn't in the office. But the con was so just crazy. I mean, I've searched my memory and say, why didn't I pick up clues? And I think he could trick me all over again if I was, if I was in that position of trust with someone like that. Really bad, I think, unbelievable stuff to me now that I look back. People that he said he knew, I believe he knew them. People that he said he worked for or where he went, but you don't do what he did and just rob one bank. I think bank robbers rob a lot of banks. That's how I look at him.
Are you aware, did any other individual come to you at any point and make clear to you that they felt they had been defrauded or otherwise wronged by Mr. Epstein in any way?
No, and crazily enough, no one ever called for a reference.
No one ever called you for a reference?
No one. People would call that he said, like the chief technologist of Google. And then a guy would call up and say he was the chief technologist of Google and I want to build a boat. So somebody says that they know the chief technologist. A guy calls you up and says, hello, I'm the chief technologist. I didn't, I mean, I could have been talking to an actor in hindsight. I mean, it's just, I don't think I've ever been conned before. I've seen movies about it. It's like, I think if the government really understands that, then a lot of things you'd be able to dig into that, aren't he should be exposed.
All right. I think that ends it for us right now. We'll go off the record.
We can go back on the record. I've got just a few sort of individual cleanup questions about things we've talked about earlier. I'll just move through them chronologically, going all the way back to when you first hired Mr. Epstein. If you could just articulate what you recall about what you thought you were getting from him. You described what he ended up doing for you, but what did you understand yourself to be hiring him for at the time?
You got to figure out. Well, when I met Jeffrey, I had somebody managing my personal stuff because there's just a lot of stuff suddenly, complexity in my personal life. And I didn't realize that I had so much complexity until one day it's there. So to me, it was my personal side of stuff was like one day it's cold and the next day it's a blizzard. And I realized I got houses and stuff that should be inventoried and, buying a car, selling a car, but just a lot of stuff. And hired Harold, and just to make sure that I wanted somebody who had accounting, not financial sense, because I wasn't looking to make more money, just someone to kind of manage things. And so today, I guess you'd call it a family office person, because I wasn't looking for accounting and I wasn't looking for investment. I was just looking for someone to just make sure that everything was in order and nothing crazy was happening. And I had sensed that Jeffrey, or that Harold wasn't doing a good enough job, just didn't have the bandwidth for the complexity. And mentioned to Bob and Wendy that things were a mess, or I was worried they were a mess. And then coincidentally, drove down the street, as I mentioned, met him, and I asked him, I don't know, it was 6 months later or a year later, something, talking to Bob and Wendy, and they said, we should call him. So I called him and said, you remember when we met? I said, I've got a guy running my stuff, personal stuff, because I wanted to keep business away from personal. And could you take a look at it? You're smart, you're financially oriented. And he said, it's not what I do, but you're Wendy's friend, you're Bob's friend. I'll come and take a look. So he started doing that and said, Harold isn't very competent. Nothing's amiss. Just it's not tidied up the way you think you should, way I think a professional would think things should be tidied in your financial personal life. And I said, well, but you've been, you looked at this. What do I owe you? And again, part of the con was, I don't want to be paid. And so after 2 years of him sorting it out, cleaning it out, I thought, started to pay him for the work. And I don't remember what it was at the time, but in terms of professional fees and whatever, I thought it was fair. And that's how it happened. So I think I'm giving a long answer, but to understand in context, because if I just say yes or no, you won't understand it. And I really want this whole group to understand it. And I never would have guessed I was being conned. Never, ever. the deceit was so subtle. Yes, I know.
Answer the question.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sure we all appreciate the stories. We're just
Okay.
trying to
Yeah,
to answer the questions
okay.
they actually wanted the answers to.
Okay.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
I hope it is.
And could I ask you, I think you said in the last hour, it was your understanding that Mr. Epstein, while he was working for you, also had other clients. Is that right?
Yes.
So would that mean that his work for you, you understood it to be part-time?
I wouldn't describe it that way. You know, I knew it wasn't I thought it wasn't full-time because he had other clients of substance, real substance.
As a listener, it sounds like substantial demands that you're describing. You were, and of course are, one of the wealthiest people in the country, managing all of your personal affairs. I would think would typically demand all of somebody's bandwidth. It sounds like that was an issue with the guy before Epstein. How was he able to do that job, but also do work for other clients at the same time?
Well, like Peg does the work now. I think you could supervise the work, overview it, which isn't the work that I do, and say you could do really thorough work if you were doing it 3 or 4 days a month, certainly a week or a day a month, just focusing on these things because there were accountants and tax lawyers and other people. And then once in setting up, as an example, I didn't have the idea to inventory furniture or valuables. And it's like, how could you have all silverware in your house and what? And I didn't count forks and spoons. And it's like, Jeff said people could be walking out with forks and spoons. I said, gee, that's a good idea. We ought to have an inventory. But then there was I hired a lady to be like the house manager who had run the U.S. Embassy in Rome. And she said, yeah, I know how to do this. And I said, well, why don't we keep inventories of stuff? And she said, well, yeah, I could do that. So she did that as kind of a puny example, but I wouldn't have had the idea. But then all the things were inventoried. That wasn't work for me or Jeffrey. It was just regularly done.
Answer the question.
Okay.
A discrete question on a different topic. We know that at one point you owned a property in Palm Beach. It was a large oceanfront estate. We understand that you sold that estate to a guy named Abe Gossman, and that later Mr. Trump and Mr. Epstein got into a bidding war over that property. Do you have any knowledge of, or did you have any involvement in that dispute between Mr. Epstein and Mr. Trump?
No.
I'd like to touch on a few specific allegations that have been made with respect to Mr. Epstein's crimes. Maria Farmer has been discussed several times today. I'll try not to repeat that too much, but there are a few aspects of her story that I did want to touch on with you. Ms. Farmer has said that the home that we've discussed, you said Mr. Kessler sold it to Mr. Epstein, it's adjacent to your property. Ms. Farmer has said that that home at the time was guarded by your security staff. And at least one member of your security staff told the Washington Post that that was accurate, at least at the time, which I think was 1996. Do you have any sense of why this home, that at that point was not on your property and wasn't your home, would have been guarded by your security staff?
Objection to the hearsay, but answer.
No.
Do you have any knowledge as to whether or not the home was guarded by your security staff, either then or now?
Then for sure not. My daughter lives there now with her husband, so I'm sure they pay attention to it, but I don't know for sure that, because it's part of the family, that they pay attention to it, but that's as close as I can get.
When it was owned by Mr. Kessler and Mr. Epstein, you have no knowledge of whether or not it was guarded by your security staff?
I have no knowledge. I would doubt that frankly fucking impossible. Pardon me, impossible.
Does that sound strange at all? It sounds a little strange to us as readers and listeners that a home that is not yours would be affirmatively guarded by your security.
Me too.
Ms. Farmer says that she, in the wake of her assault, reached out to the county sheriff's office and that she was told, quote, "We work for Wexner." And the sheriff's office confirmed that at that time they were contracted to assist with your security detail. Do you have any sense of why that would have been the case?
Same objection to the hearsay answer.
No, the closest I could get to that would be sometime people who work for county security, Columbus Police Force. We would use part-time police, like at entrances or patrolling, but not. They wouldn't have been employees of ours. I mean, so it's possible, but I didn't. It's weird. I don't know the sheriff.
Could you elaborate for a moment on what would that part-time role have been? Like a special event? They would be at the entrance?
Yeah, it would have been special events. Yeah, that's very accurate.
Ms. Farmer says that summer when she wanted to leave the home, she had to call the main house, your house, and ask for your wife's permission. Do you have any knowledge about whether that's accurate?
I doubt that it's accurate, and I have no knowledge.
And I think you said earlier, but just to make sure, when did you first become aware of Ms. Farmer's allegations?
In the press.
Did your security staff or anyone else on your staff ever alert you to any unusual incident or event involving Mr. Epstein at the home that we've been discussing?
None.
Are you aware of any other incidents related to sexual assault or misconduct where somebody on your property or Mr. Epstein's former property adjacent called the sheriff's office for help?
Absolutely not. Not aware.
I'd like to touch on Victoria's Secret and Mr. Epstein presenting himself as a recruiter. Again, I know it's been discussed earlier. I'll try to cover new ground to the extent possible. I think you had testified that you were alerted to that issue once. It's been publicly reported that in 1993, President Cynthia Fetus Fields, who was an executive at Victoria's Secret at the time, was alerted that Epstein was holding himself out as a Victoria's Secret scout, and that you were alerted to the problem and, quote, said that you would stop it. Does that sound like the time frame in which you recall being told about the issue?
Maybe it didn't. It could have been. I was trying to think when she worked in the business and when she left. But yeah, probably right. I don't know for sure.
What do you specifically recall about when you were alerted to the issue? In other words, who approached you and what did they describe specifically?
Something like Jeffrey's trying to pick up women, and he says he's a Victoria's Secret talent scout. And I said, that's terrible, or the nonsense, or I'll put a stop to it. Something like that, because it could be possible, I think, in my memory, but I didn't believe it. But I know I called him up and said, are you, Jeffrey, what is going on? He said, do you think I'm stupid? And I said, because I hope not, because if not, you'll be dead. There was a very brief conversation. I remember him being definite about it didn't happen, and it wasn't a long conversation. I was mad.
So it was a blanket denial from Mr. Epstein.
That's very accurate.
And did you believe or were you convinced by his denial at the time?
At the time, yes, I did believe it.
So is it right that you were no longer upset following that conversation because you believed that he had not, in fact, held himself out as a scout?
That's accurate, yes. That's how I felt.
Do you recall whether you had the impression that your executives simply made the story up? Or...
I don't recall just knowing how I think about things. I probably would have said this is just Jeffrey Single. You know, it's a thing to say, a rumor could get started, I gotta chase it down because you know, God forbid that anybody was in the business, let alone outside the business, was dating people in the business or dating models or recruiting them or any of the stuff that we now know is true. I would have fired them on the spot.
In May 1997, a young woman named Alicia Arden says that she was introduced to a man who identified himself as a talent scout for Victoria's Secret. That was Jeffrey Epstein. Mr. Epstein allegedly invited Miss Arden to his hotel room in Santa Monica, California, to audition for the catalog. When she arrived, Mr. Epstein grabbed her, tried to undress her, and said he wanted to, quote, manhandle her. Miss Arden fled in tears and filed a police report. It's one of the earliest allegations that are known against Mr. Epstein.
Yeah.
Were you alerted to this sexual assault at the time?
Same objection to hearsay, but go ahead.
Kind of the same answer. I don't know how I knew about it, and you know, called Jeffrey like, "What the hell's going on, Jeffrey?" And I was like, "Do you think I'm stupid?" Yeah. Like, this was a bad girl. You know, I was on a date. She made all this stuff up. You don't think I'd behave this way, would you? And I hope not. Was probably what I said, because I couldn't believe that anybody that I knew would behave like that.
And what you're describing, is that the original single conversation you described earlier, or is that a separate conversation with Mr. Epstein about the issue?
I'm a little confused. This question about the lady in the hotel in New York was one conversation, and the notion or the discussion about Jeffrey's interviewing models, I think, was a separate one, and they didn't happen simultaneously.
I understand. It sounds like that might have been about 4 years apart from each other.
You could tell me 4 years or 4 months. I don't remember.
So it sounds like at that point there would have been at least 2 conversations with Mr. Epstein about the broader Victoria's Secret issue. In 2004, a woman named Elizabetta Tai had a similar experience. She was invited to Mr. Epstein's New York home under the impression that he would be able to get her a job as a Victoria's Secret model. Mr. Epstein apparently, allegedly, undressed and handed her a vibrator. Ms. Tai threw the vibrator at his head and ran out of the room. Were you made aware of this allegation at the time?
I never heard this story before.
In 2005, the New York Post ran an article describing a Romanian model who allegedly landed a gig at Wexner's Victoria's Secret brand thanks to Mr. Epstein. Did you have any knowledge about models who actually acquired jobs at Victoria's Secret directly or indirectly through Mr. Epstein?
No, but I didn't meet, interview, or pick models. That wasn't what I did, and no one in the business did.
But just to phrase it clearly, to your knowledge, did Victoria's Secret ever hire or contract with a model at the recommendation of Jeffrey Epstein?
No, I can't imagine they did. No, I wouldn't know if they did, but the way that we handled our marketing, it couldn't have happened. I think I would have known, because it just wasn't the practice.
Could I ask one follow-up question with respect to that second conversation and the young woman named Alicia Arden? I know they were a few years apart, but if you recall, was there any part of you that doubted whether Mr. Epstein had been truthful in his denial with you the first time?
At the time, I don't think I connected them. You can't imagine how busy I was. I was engaged, I was married, I'm running 20 businesses. I never made the connection.
And as far as you recall, those are the only 2 times that you were alerted to Mr. Epstein holding himself out as affiliated with Victoria's Secret.
Those stories, yeah.
It's been reported that following Mr. Epstein's arrest in 2019, The limited company, L Brands, retained two different law firms were retained to investigate Epstein's affiliation with the company. We're not aware of those reports ever having been made public. To your knowledge, were those investigations completed?
When was it?
This would be after the arrest, so in 2019 and 2020.
I'm not aware that the board investigated Jeffrey.
And I think the first law firm investigation was for the board, broadly speaking, and then some individual board members engaged the law firm to perform a second investigation. But it sounds like you have no knowledge of either investigation.
I found out about 2 weeks ago that from one of our ex-board members that he'd hired Kroll to investigate Jeffrey, and I never knew it.
Could you elaborate on that just a moment? In other words, a board member describe what exactly?
Well, this was 2 weeks ago. That he was worried about Jeffrey, and he asked Jules Kroll to investigate him.
Is Jules Kroll
An investigator, white-collar criminal. He was a Justice Department, FBI kind of a guy. Started his own, I think it's the largest international and private investigation firm in the world. And so he said, and I said, so what happened? And he said, he didn't think Jeffrey was a good guy. And I said, what else? He said, that's all he would say. He said, just not a good guy. And he said, he asked him for specifics. And Jules said, I don't have any specifics. He's just not a good guy, whatever that meant.
Do you recall approximately what time frame the Kroll review was undertaken, or how was it described to you?
Well, the way it was described to me is the board member asked Jules Kroll. He didn't tell me it was a board thing. And so it must have been, I don't know, about 19 or 20, because I know when I retired, I know when and I think I know when COVID was and all those things that happened, but I had no knowledge of it. And I was kind of, frankly, it made no difference to me, but I was kind of surprised that somebody on the board would investigate somebody and not tell me, or, as the founder, principal, whatever. They didn't, which is probably a good thing.
So for the two law firm investigations I described and this separate Kroll inquiry, it sounds like you had no awareness of those when they occurred.
Nothing.
I would like to introduce Minority Exhibit J.
Do one more.
Yeah. So, as you can see, this is an email from June of 2008, right around the time that Epstein pled guilty to soliciting a minor for prostitution. And you said to him, quote, Abigail told me the result. All I can say is I feel sorry. You violated your own #1 rule, always be careful. And Epstein replied, no excuse. So clearly, either you knew or Epstein had said to you that his #1 rule was to be careful. What, in your recollection, was he so careful about?
About being honest and stealing from me, us, these criminal, terrible, horrible things that he did. And I don't know what prompted me, because when I saw this, I think I was just giving him the finger. It's something in the news, something. Maybe it was the fact that Abigail told me, and I was cooking on it, and I just wanted, like, you sold yourself as a careful, honest fiduciary, and you completely robbed us, did all these terrible things.
It sounds like you, at least at the time, understood that Mr. Epstein, it sounds like Mr. Epstein would say that his number one rule was to be careful. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. What do you recall that being in the context of when Mr. Epstein would say that? Why was that his number one rule? I'll phrase it that way.
Well, again, he alleged himself to be a fiduciary, and I'm always careful about my clients. You know, I don't do risky investments. I wasn't looking for cleverness. I was looking for accuracy, conservative. Like, you just run things really smoothly. And Jeffrey would say, "Don't worry, I'm always very careful." And that might have meant to be not abusive to my admin or be prompt and accurate with tax returns. He's just careful because that's what you would expect. If my personal attorney would have said, "Don't worry, I'm always careful on your account," that would ring, comfortably for me. And complete crook.
And you touched on it, but in terms of what you can recall about how you felt at the time, the crimes, even the crime that he pled to, was not insignificant. It involved a minor. Do you recall? I mean, that would seem not to necessarily be the product of simply not being careful. So do you recall whether you felt anger, shock, or simply how could you have been so careless?
I don't remember how I felt. Probably anger that a person in a trust position could be so mistrusted, so crooked, so bad.
As far as you can recall, when was the last time you spoke with Mr. Epstein?
Well, it was probably sometime before I gave him the finger. So it probably was in 07 or 08, sometimes when he got in trouble. In my mind, he died.
Well, definitely at this point, you two were in communication, so that's the middle of 2008.
You have someone who spoke to him.
Sure, I'll clarify. Any form of electronic or verbal communication.
I wouldn't remember that I did this. What I remember is when I found out how bad his sexual behavior was, and he was stealing from us, dead.
If you recall, I think you had said that he initially framed the investigation to you as involving a massage and an overzealous police chief. At least that was what your counsels represented to DOJ. Do you recall that?
I don't recall it. I don't know that he told Abigail that, and she told me.
No, not what she told
Okay,
you.
I don't know. How I know, I don't know.
Do you recall when you first became aware of his crimes involving minors?
I don't recall.
There is evidence that Mr. Epstein tried to get in touch with you in 2010 and 2011. We don't know whether that continued later. Do you have any recollection of having any form of contact with him after 2008?
Nothing. I'm positive that I had no communication of any kind. I keep repeating that from my point of view, he died. I didn't want to even think about it. Yeah, man.
Starting to wrap up, are there other individuals from Mr. Epstein's orbit at the time that you think we should talk to who might have an understanding of Mr. Epstein's crimes?
What I'm thinking is that he referenced several people that I never met. Do I think they might have information? Possibly, but I don't know whether he made it up or he really did it.
Do you recall some examples of people he would reference?
Yeah, he'd say, I was in Aspen last week. And I'd say, oh, what were you doing in Aspen? And he said, the family that owns Fidelity in Massachusetts, Johnson. He said, I worked for Abigail Johnson, and I was there, talking to her about their family situation. But he could have been making it up. But at the time, I said, geez, he works for the Johnson family. They're pretty sophisticated. He would talk about the founders of Google, that they were friends, and he'd visit them. He would talk about, you got to come out to San Francisco. You should meet the Amazon guy. Bezos. And I said, no, I'm not too busy, and I'm interested, and I don't do what he does. And I said, but he's really a smart guy. You should meet him. I said, if I'm ever in San Francisco, I'll look him up. I'm too busy. Trying to think if there's any others. The Google guys. And I never met them. I never met Abigail Johnson. But I know the name. That's all I can recall. But there were so many names dropped that, and I don't know, I don't know as much interest in celebrities, political celebrities or whatever. He was just like, I know so-and-so, or I know so-and-so. I don't want to mislead you and get a woman I don't know in trouble like Abigail Johnson. But up until the fact that I believed that he was a crook, I believed that he knew all these people.
Do you recall whether he ever described anybody as his closest personal friends? Do you have an understanding of who his close friends would be?
No, he would talk about friends that he had. He would say he told me how friendly he was with Ava's husband, and I always thought that's kind of funny. But you're friends with your ex-fiance girlfriend's husband, but it was stuff like that. Did I believe that he knew Clinton? No, I didn't believe it. But sometimes people say that, they knew high people in high places.
Do you have any reflections as we close this conversation, whether it's on your relationship with Mr. Epstein or the pain and suffering that he and his accomplices inflicted on countless victims and survivors, largely with your resources? Any reflections of any kind on the entire topic?
Objection assumes the fact not in evidence.
Well, I believe he had a lot of resources beside mine. I think the only thing I said earlier was that if you understand, I think he had, in hindsight, multiple personalities, incredibly smart, which I didn't really see. I mean, when you can bullshit Nobel laureates about physics and university professors and physicians and all the people that I've read about, I mean, if it was a movie, no one would believe it. I mean, but what I read about him and the connections is so, and I think that the perspective to understand it would be to understand how intelligent he was as a criminal and all the things that he did. And I mean, I have trouble imagining how he could just do all the shit that he did, forget about work, in a 48-hour day, because it was always so busy with my stuff. And then you find out all these relationships. It's just, mind-boggling, and some of it, even today, I can't believe that it's so, but some of the stuff I believe because I read about it. I mean, stuff I read yesterday, I can't fucking, pardon me, I can't believe this. And I think to understand it, the criminal activities, all this stuff, it's like, I hope you guys are really good. And as I said earlier, I hope, probably the dismay of my advisors to give you an accurate picture of how I am and how he was, how I perceived him. And I mean, diabolical isn't a big enough word. And I think I said early, Bernie Madoff was a Boy Scout compared to Jeffrey. I mean, if I just believe what I read in the press about people that he contacted, university presidents, Gergen, my friend, I mean, it's just crazy. But he was beyond perfect or good at doing all the shit that he did. It's just, I think it's the rumor and innuendo that goes around me makes me very mad, because I think I'm a very straight arrow and a very responsible person. I don't want to give you a speech on my virtue, but I'm comfortable in my own skin. And I look at, I say, it's so preposterous to me what he got away with so long with so many people that I can't imagine how a mind could do that and be robbing banks. It's crazy.
Thank you. And then one last question. I think your counsel has represented to DOJ that your assets accounted for virtually all of Mr. Epstein's wealth. It sounds like you don't agree with that?
I wouldn't know it. But I really don't know what his wealth is. But, island house, all that, lifestyle, buying people's gifts. And it would seem to me that having a good sense of how much money now he probably stole from us, or more than that we don't even know about yet, because it was disguised. I think it's a vast, I know, if you said it, to do all the things he did, and now I know he was, if you would, a bank robber. Bank robbers don't rob one bank. That was just, there's more there. And I can understand why people like myself who were robbed don't want to be mentioned, because they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to, appear naive or dumb. I mean, when I look in the mirror, I know I see an honest person, but in this, I was completely blind.
Okay. Thank you. We can go off the record.
Subscribe to One India and never miss an update. Download the One India app now.